Hello, movie lovers. Today, we're diving into a classic Chinese martial art film, New Dragon Gate Inn. This movie tells the tale of a group of skilled warriors who join forces to protect the children of a loyal minister. They face off against the Imperial Secret Service in a battle of wits and courage set against the backdrop of a vast desert. Our story unfolds during the Jingtai era of the Ming Dynasty, around the mid-15th century. In those days, the palace eunuchs held tremendous power, disrupting the normal order of the nation. The chief eunuch, Cao Shaoqin, controlled a secret police organization known as the Eastern Depot. Not content with merely serving the emperor, Cao forced court officials to pay bribes and ruthlessly persecuted anyone who opposed him. The entire court was in chaos. Witnessing these outrageous events, Yang Yushuan, the Minister of War, could no longer remain silent. In an official report, he detailed the crimes of the Eastern Depot and urged the emperor to disband the organization and restore order to the government. However, Cao Shaoqin, with his iron grip on power, intercepted the report. He threw Yang Yuchuan into prison, attempting to force him to surrender his military authority. Despite enduring brutal torture, Yang refused to yield. In his final act of defiance, he cursed Cao to his face and bit off his own tongue, choosing death over submission. Yang Yushuan's heroic sacrifice did nothing to quell Cao Shaoqin's fury. He forged an imperial decree ordering the execution of Yang's entire family. Secretly, however, he spared Yang's young son and daughter, sending them to the border region. His plan was to lure out Yang's trusted ally, Zhou Huai'an, the commander of 800,000 imperial guards. In the desolate northern frontier, Yang's children were being escorted across the land. These two kids, once accustomed to a life of luxury, now found themselves in shackles, forced to trek over 1,000 miles. Hungry and thirsty, they received a small amount of water from their compassionate escorts. The elder sister, showing wisdom beyond her years, gave her share to her younger brother. From the capital to the frontier, the siblings' every move was closely monitored by Cao Shaoqin. Determined to eliminate any potential threat, the Eastern Depot's leader personally led a large army in pursuit. He set up ambushes at various checkpoints, waiting for Zhou Huai'an to attempt a rescue and fall into his carefully laid trap. As expected, 4 horsemen appeared on the horizon, racing towards the siblings and their escorts. These riders were skilled martial artists, ready to fight for justice. The 2 escorts, mere pawns in a larger game, offered no resistance and willingly unlocked the children's shackles. No sooner had this happened than the Eastern Depot's henchmen came galloping in, clashing with the 4 warriors. From a distance, Cao Shaoqin watched the battle with cold detachment. In his eyes, the warriors' skills, though impressive, paled in comparison to Zhou Huai'an's. Suddenly, a figure in a wide-brimmed hat leaped into the air, charging straight at the Eastern Depot's main camp on the mountainside. Seeing their leader under attack, the nearby experts drew their swords, barely managing to fend off the newcomer's fierce assault. Meanwhile, the Eastern Depot's cavalry charged in bravely. The warriors who had rescued the children were outnumbered and wounded. Just as the situation seemed dire, the mysterious fighter, realizing this wasn't the right moment for a prolonged battle, seized an opportunity to escape. The bait had been taken, but Cao Shaoqin made no move to pursue. He knew that neither the attacker nor the rescuers were Zhou Huai'an. His sole purpose remained unchanged: to eliminate Zhou Huai'an once and for all. With the Eastern Depot's forces not giving chase, the warriors breathed a sigh of relief. The swordsman who had been fighting the depot's experts was named Chu Moyan. A close friend of Zhou Huai'an, he had come at Zhou's request to rescue young Yuxuan's children. As agreed, they planned to rendezvous at an inn before Dragon Gate Pass to figure out how to smuggle the children across the border. This inn was known as the Dragon Gate Inn. In the middle of the desert, a lone inn stood amidst the vast expanse of sand. Located on a crucial route to the border, this inn saw a steady stream of customers. However, not everyone who entered would leave alive. Indeed, this was a den of murderers. The innkeeper, Jin Xiangyu, was a strikingly beautiful woman, but her business was far from innocent. She ran a deadly operation, turning unsuspecting guests into meat for her dumplings. Any customer without powerful connections who showed interest in her would likely end up as the filling for the next batch of buns. On this particular day, Jin Xiangyu had just dispatched another victim using her signature weapon, the willow leaf darts. She sent the body through a secret passage to the kitchen, where the cook, Diao Buyu, would chop it up for meat filling. Just then, the local border official, known as the Qianhu, arrived with his men. The Dragon Gate Inn owed its existence to the Qianhu's protection. While Jin Xiangyu flattered him endlessly, in her heart she saw him as nothing more than a useful tool. After all, how could such a crude man ever truly catch her eye? After dealing with the body, Jin Xiangyu feigned illness to send the Qianhu away. No sooner had the Qianhu left than Chu Moyan arrived with his group. The Qianhu, who had received the wanted poster for Zhou Huayan, scrutinized Chu Moyan closely before leaving disappointed. Jin Xiangyu's experienced eye immediately spotted that Chu Moyan was a woman disguised as a man. She approached to test the waters, and upon realizing Chu wasn't in the same line of work, she instructed her staff to keep a close watch. No sooner had she spoken than Chu Moyan thoroughly thrashed a group of troublemakers who had come to cause problems. As Jin Xiangyu stood there with a headache, a sudden laugh echoed across the seemingly empty desert. Startled, Jin Xiangyu realized it was Zhou Huayan arriving on camelback. She tested him with a coded message, which he answered flawlessly. Zhou's confident demeanor and handsome features instantly captivated Jin Xiangyu, melting away her usual aloofness. She tried to get close to him, but Zhou only had eyes for Chu Moyan, completely ignoring the innkeeper's advances. Zhou Huayan, upon meeting Yang's children, asked Jin Xiangyu about ways to cross the border. She informed him that the Dragon Gate Pass was now closed to all traffic. There were two options: the official route, which required bribing the Qianhu, or the secret path, which would require a private meeting with her that night. The exact nature of this favor would depend on Zhou's perceptiveness. Shortly after, Jia, one of Cao Shaoqin's subordinates, arrived at the inn with his men. They claimed to be merchants seeking lodging, but were secretly inquiring about Zhou Huayan's whereabouts. As night fell, a fierce sandstorm engulfed the desert. The Eastern Depot's agents scoured the inn inside and out. Two eunuchs, who had just climbed onto the roof, were struck by lightning and fell, causing Jin Xiangyu to burst into laughter. Hidden in their room, Zhou Huayan and Chu Moyan dared not make a sound. Fortunately, Jia, noticing the severe weather, concluded that Zhou Huayan couldn't possibly attempt to cross the desert that night. He decided to wait until morning to make his next move. The next day, the storm continued to rage. Zhou Huayan had no choice but to brazenly lead his group into the main hall, sitting face to face with Jia. Seeing Zhou appear, Jia's eyes lit up, and he approached to engage in a battle of wits. As tensions rose, it seemed a fight was imminent. Jin Xiangyu, who valued her inn above all else, rushed to intervene, fearing a large-scale battle would destroy her livelihood. A whole roasted lamb was skillfully carved by Diao Buyu, divided into two portions. Jin Xiangyu invited everyone to eat, but Diao Buyu's exceptional knife skills hadn't gone unnoticed. Uncertain of Jin Xiangyu's allegiance, neither side dared to make a move. Nothing eventful happened during the day, but as night fell, Zhou Huayan and Chu Moyan split up to search for the secret passage out of the inn. Zhou understood the ways of the Jianghu, the world of martial artists. Any den of thieves would surely have a secret escape route. In the dark of night, Zhou Huayan snuck into Jia's room, but accidentally triggered a trap and was discovered. The eunuch guarding the room was no weakling in martial arts, but after a few moves, Zhou managed to block his pressure points, rendering him immobile. While Zhou worked in the darkness, Jia was also busy. He slipped into Zhou's room, only to encounter the innkeeper, Jin Xiangyu. Jin, still harboring hopes of winning Zhou's affections, was offered a deal by Jia. Ensured Zhou stays at the inn for one more night, and he'd reward her with 1,000 taels of silver. After some consideration, Jin agreed. Jia returned to his room, satisfied with his deal, only to immediately spot Zhou hiding behind a screen. The two engaged in combat, fighting to a stalemate. Concerned for the safety of the others, Zhou didn't linger. After a few exchanges, he leaped out of the window. Meanwhile, cries for help came from the children's room. The two kind-hearted constables protecting them were cornered by Jia's men. At the critical moment, Chu Moyan arrived just in time to save Yang's children. After a night of chaos, both sides came up empty-handed. Jia didn't have enough confidence to capture Zhou Huayan, so he could only wait for Cao Shaoqin's reinforcements. Zhou, on the other hand, hadn't found the secret passage and decided to risk a bloody escape from the inn. Before leaving, Chu Moyan gave her most treasured flute to Zhou as a memento of their ill-timed connection. In the inn's main hall, the Eastern Depot's men stood ready for battle. Zhou Huayan's hand hovered over his sword hilt. Just as the tension peaked and a fierce battle seemed imminent, the greedy and lecherous Qianhu showed up again. Jia, ever the cunning one, maintained his merchant disguise, hoping to watch the situation unfold to his advantage. Chu Moyan, cool as ever, produced a trophy from the previous night's escapade, an Eastern Depot badge. The badge was genuine, but so was Zhou Huayan's wanted poster. As the Qianhu struggled with indecision, Jin Xiangyu secretly added a small mark to the portrait, casting suspicion on the Eastern Depot. Delighted by this turn of events, the Qianhu ordered his men to arrest the Eastern Depot agents for the reward. The Eastern Depot suffered a setback and had to use thousands of silver notes to send the Qianhu away. But when they turned back, Zhou Huayan had vanished. Taking advantage of the chaos, Zhou Huayan had slipped back into Jia's room, still searching for the elusive secret passage. In a hidden corner, he finally discovered a mechanism. Following it, he slid down a chute, only to encounter Diao Buyu, who was preparing to butcher another victim. Hearing the commotion in the kitchen, Jin Xiangyu rushed over. She found Zhou still fixated on the secret passage, even offering 1,000 taels of silver for directions. At this, Jin Xiangyu laughed, "I'll take the money and I'll take the man too." That night, the inn was decked out in festive decorations, with servants shouting congratulations to a newlywed couple. The sudden celebration puzzled Jia at first, but he quickly realized it might be Jin Xiangyu's ploy to keep Zhou Huayan at the inn for the promised silver. With this in mind, Jia instructed his men to keep smiling and drinking while closely monitoring the inn's activities. When it came time for the wedding night festivities, Chu Moyan interrupted, challenging the couple to a drinking contest. In the bustling inn, everyone had their own agenda. But only Chu Moyan truly wanted to drink herself into oblivion. Her heart ached for Zhou Huayan, but seeing Jin Xiangyu playing with her flute and entering the bridal chamber with Zhou was almost unbearable. Before the wedding, Zhou Huayan had explained that marrying Jin Xiangyu was a ploy to force her to reveal the secret passage's location in the bridal chamber, allowing them all to escape. But if that was the case, why were there two entwined silhouettes visible on the window screen? As time ticked by, Jin Xiangyu continued her seduction, delaying the revelation of the secret passage's location. Downstairs, two of the warriors could no longer contain themselves. Believing Zhou Huayan had succumbed to Jin's charms, they overturned tables and drew swords against the Eastern Depot agents, determined to carve out an escape route with the children. In an instant, the small inn became a bloodbath. Chu Moyan's sword danced through the air as she fought alongside the two warriors, desperately trying to escape with the children. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, making it impossible to discern the direction of Dragon Gate Pass. The thundering hoofbeats of a large cavalry unit could be heard approaching. Receiving Jia's message, Cao Shaoqin had arrived with his troops. After a round of arrows, both the two warriors and the Eastern Depot agents, who had given chase, were turned into pincushions. Chu Moyan was also gravely wounded, barely managing to search for the children among the corpses. Fortunately, the children had been shielded by the warriors' bodies and had narrowly escaped death. Meanwhile, inside the inn, Zhou Huayan was locked in fierce combat with Jia. Hearing the chaos downstairs, he quickly exited the bridal chamber, only to be entangled by Jia, unable to break free. Jin Xiangyu, enraged upon discovering that Jia had killed her employees, furiously kicked a eunuch into a millstone. Channeling her anger, she managed to wound Jia severely, allowing her and Zhou to finally end his life. After the battle, only Zhou Huai'an and Jin Xiangyu remained alive in the inn. At this moment, Chu Moyan returned with the children, informing Zhou that Chao's army had arrived. Zhou was deeply pained by Chu's arrow wounds, and, as he tended to her injuries, their eyes were filled with tender emotions. Jin Jiangyu watched, consumed by jealousy but powerless to intervene. As dawn broke, Cao Shaoqin gave the order, and the Eastern Depot cavalry unleashed a barrage of arrows at the inn. Jin Xiangyu had sent Diao Buyu to seek help from the Qianhu, but he refused. Left with no choice, she led everyone through the secret passage to escape the inn. Jin Xiangyu's secret tunnel was impressively deep. By the time they emerged, Chao's army was far behind. However, Zhou's belt had accidentally been caught by the children and carried away by the wind, landing in Cao Shaoqin's hands. In an instant, Cao realized something was amiss and gave chase with his cavalry. Jin's subordinate willow leaf darts managed to take down some of the cavalry, but even a single Cao Shaoqin proved too much for them to handle. Amidst the swirling sandstorm, willow leaf darts and Diao Buyu took the children away, while Zhou Huai'an, Chu Moyan, and Jin Xiangyu surrounded Cao Shaoqin. Despite their efforts, they were no match for him, each suffering severe injuries. The desert was treacherous at this time of year. After an intense battle in the raging winds, all four were soon half buried in the sand. As the sky darkened, Zhou Huai'an, unable to dodge, watched helplessly as Chu Moyan took a fatal blow for him before being swallowed by the sand, forever lost beneath the vast desert. Grief-stricken and enraged, Zhou Huai'an attempted to avenge Chu Moyan, but was quickly struck by an arrow. He and Jin Xiangyu fell, nearly losing all ability to fight. At this critical moment, Diao Buyu, having sent the children away, leapt from his sand hiding place and engaged Cao Shaoqin with his meat-cleaving techniques. In a dazzling display of knife work, Cao Shaoqin's hands and feet were stripped of flesh, leaving only stark white bone. Diao Buyu, however, retreated into the sand, howling in pain. As Cao Shaoqin thrust his sword into the sand, Diao Buyu grabbed the blade with his bare hands. Seizing this opportunity, Zhou Huai'an picked up Chu Moyan's sword and charged at Cao Shaoqin, delivering a fatal blow to his throat. At last, their great enemy was vanquished. In the story's conclusion, Zhou Huai'an rode away on a camel, leaving this heartbreaking place behind. Jin Xiangyu, no longer interested in staying, set fire to the inn, burning it to ashes. When Diao Buyu asked where she planned to go, she said she would find Zhou Huai'an. This is the story of the Chinese wuxia film New Dragon Gate Inn. Well, that's all for this video. Follow me to explore more classic movies.